So here we are at Crisis, and we've just played a game of Sharp Practice. We're going to introduce you to two fine fellows who've been playing all the games. So first of all, we've got
Martin
and we've got
Terry.
So they've just been playing Sharp Practice, set on the Caribbean island of music, and we've had an extremely bloody game in which almost all of the different units have taken heavy casualties, but the point of the game is to rescue the governor, and the governor has just got away. So guys, how did you find the game? Did you enjoy it, and what's your impressions?
Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. I like the way it went back and forth. It went very fluently, so good set of rules.
Yeah, same here. So it played really easy.
Yeah.
With a nice flow to the game.
And it's the sort of thing that you can imagine yourself playing at a club or with friends one evening?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, we had a great time here. Thanks very much for taking part and for joining in such good sports. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
So here at Crisis Antwerp, we've just finished our second game, and I'm being joined by Alex, who's been one of the players in our game of the Ypres Cameen Canal in 1940. So Alex, how did you enjoy the game?
I loved it. Must say that because I won, but I played on the German side, and it really attacked, really showed how much the Germans could attack, and how the British could defend against it.
And are you a regular Chain of Command player, or is
this is the second time I played it. I played it for 3 years ago for the first time at Crisis as well. I bought the game, but haven't played it since, so I want to have a refresher course.
I know you're a World War II regular wargamer. Have you played other World War II games?
Played Flames of War and played a few games of Ein bin Schattmann.
Very good. And you quite like the. What did you like about the game in particular? Was it the command, control, or the way that you could sort of move the troops, or the jump-off points, or just the overall sort of experience?
The overall experience, and in this way that the way to activate the troops. It's a bit chaotic. It shows really the chaos in a battle. It's not I go you go system to what's
very good.
What's too much like chess.
Well, Alex, thank you so much for being a sport and taking part in the podcast. We hope to see you here again next year.
I certainly will. Thank you,
and welcome to this next episode of the Lardy Oddcast. And we're here in one of our favourite bars in Antwerp, enjoying a couple of beers after a very frantic day at Crisis 2017. And I'm gathered here with Richard Clark, Nick Skinner, Biffo and Noddy, and I am your host for this evening's entertainment, Sidney Roundwwod.
And here are the beers, excellent.
And as if by magic, the beers have just arrived.
And the pretzels too.
And the pretzels as well. And we're going to be talking about what we've enjoyed from today's show. So I'm going to start with...
Not with me, I'm eating Chris.
Richard Clark.
Yeah.
Richard, what's made this a really special show for you?
Well, these nibbles are very nice, so I'm just kind of working my way into those. It's been another great day at Crisis, another great Crisis. We've been coming here, I think, for 10 years now. I think this is the 10th anniversary of us coming here. And one of the things that really makes it for me is the opportunity to see friends old and new. There's people here who we've seen every year. There are people here who we've seen for the first time, who are people that we know from the Yahoo group, from the Facebook group, from the all the different forums that we're on. And it's great when people take that opportunity to come up and talk to us and have a chat with us. So that was fantastic. Really enjoyed that. We had a great game of Chain of Command. Nick was running Sharp Practice all day.
And you were running Chain of Command, which was the Ypres Cameen Canal, which was the battlefield that we saw just a couple of days ago.
Kind of. It was kind of a tribute act rather than the real things. So this was this was the fake stones rather than the Rolling Stones. It was a game that was intended to have some of the feel of that, because when I planned the scenario, we hadn't walked the battlefield. So having walked the battlefield now, I know an awful lot more, and we can go and involve that in a pint-sized campaign. But yeah, I mean, I think really, it's the great thing about Antwerp. It's not just the show; it's the whole thing. You know, we arrived last night, went out, had a few beers in town. Antwerp's a beautiful, beautiful city, and we're going to, now having all the stress of preparing for the show gone, it's going to be a nice opportunity to sit down with friends, have a few drinks, and just relax and enjoy an evening with some mates. So for me, meeting friends, old and new, is the highlight of Antwerp.
It's a big social experience, and somebody who has really been surrounded by people throughout the whole of the day, playing his game and really enjoying a fantastic experience of sharp practice, is my other mate, Nick Skinner. Nick, how has this show been for you?
They're all good at Antwerp. They are all cracking shows, and we have a splendid time. As I predicted, I've got virtually no voice, and my feet are as sore as a sore thing. But we've had a good day. It's been lovely. Well, Richard said it. It's been great to see so many people that come to the show, come to see some of the games that we run. It's nice when you're doing a participation game and somebody runs in early to sit at your table to be part of the game, which we had today with Chain of Command, which is really good to show that people want to be there and want to be part of it and have a great game. We've had some. I think we've had a good day today. The football has been pretty good. I haven't had the conversations with people that I would like to have had on the basis that we've been running games. So we ran, as you said, Lost in Music the morning and afternoon for sharp practice, which was we had great fun and two good games, two different games as well. This morning was very, very close, and the island governor very nearly got caught by his shirt tails, as you know.
He almost got chopped into pieces, didn't
he?
He
Almost got chopped into pieces, but this afternoon Colonel Ramjan and his mates were much more organised and did a more organised defence. So yeah, we had a really good day. It's nice to see people. Good show, good conversations, and I'm as tired as a dog now. Looking forward to some good food and a nice beer.
Sounds fantastic. So we're also joined by two of our most special guests, great friends.
Special needs associates.
Two great friends of ours. We've got Biffo and Noddy, who've been a member of the TooFatLardies crew since I joined about 17 years ago. So Biffo, Noddy, how was the show for you guys?
Very good, very good. One of the best shows that we ever attend throughout the year, quite frankly. We all enjoy it. We enjoy the atmosphere that Antwerp brings and the atmosphere that Crisis brings, and it's a really great show.
Did you guys get a chance to see any of the other games, anything that was going on? I mean, one of the things that I find when I'm running games, and I know Nick finds it when he's running games, is that you're almost sort of lashed to your table and don't really get the chance to have a wander around and see other things. I don't know, Noddy, did you get a chance to go and have a look at any of the other games, have a look at any of the products that were on display? Anything catch your eye?
Well, as you know, Rich, you tend to work us very hard, so we're pretty well tied to the table, and we don't get paid at all for the work that we do. But yes, I did manage to find a couple of moments to walk around, and one of the reasons I really enjoy coming over to Crisis is the fact.
Actually, I think we've had enough from you now, Noddy. Sorry, mate.
One of the reasons I really enjoy coming to Crisis is the sheer quality of all of the games that we see there. I mean, really, you don't get a duff game at Crisis. Everyone puts a lot of effort in. Everyone's extremely friendly. You know, people coming along to the stand, and they're extremely complimentary for the work that you're doing as well. So, no, it's a great pleasure to come along to this particular show.
Yeah. Biff, and did you make any purchases, or was I working you so hard and paying you so little you couldn't afford it and didn't have time to do so?
Again, I was lashed to the stand, but I did manage to have a little wander around the show. One thing I found particularly interesting was some guys had some printed terrain in our hall that displayed some samurai figures, and the standard of the painting on those figures was absolutely superb. I really did enjoy those. Look at those figures; they were absolutely superb.
I think what's amazing about those figures, and this was a really small game. It's about 4 feet by 4 feet. It's a classic sort of really small sort of game that you put on with a couple of mates at the club. I think what was amazing about those figures is that they were Dixon's Samurai figures, 25mm, and their vintage must have been at least 30 years old, and they were painted absolutely beautifully.
I remember them coming out.
Well, I mean, I have to say, whatever you say about Dixon's Samurai figures, they were the benchmark that was set for Samurai, and they have a certain style to them which is well, it's stylized, I think is the only word, but for me they are still I think what they represent, rather than the human being version, is actually the paintings that you see of the period, and it's certainly, they represent the way the Japanese and the samurai of that period viewed themselves. And I like that sort of full round face look that you can really paint up, and the lacquered armour and everything. For me, I don't think Dixon's samurai figures have ever been better.
Yeah, no, I agree. I didn't see that particular game, but I was wondering, Sid, you had plenty of free time and you wandered around very freely, and what did you see? Did you see any great themes or any trends that you recognised in the games? Was there anything you can put your finger on?
I think the one thing which strikes me when going around Crisis, which is different to the big UK shows, is that there's a lot of smaller games, and then the smaller games done brilliantly. Sometimes with just a few friends, just playing, or sometimes participation, and that really makes the show for me. It's not necessarily that big is
big is beautiful.
Well, big can be really fantastic, and big is a really you get these fantastically huge games at a show like Salute or a show like Partisan, and they are always really impressive. They're a tribute to the people who've worked on those. But at a smaller show like Crisis, there seems to be a real trend towards the 4 foot square table with about 7 or 8 players, each taking a small skirmish group, with immaculately painted figures and some tremendous terrain. And I think that's something which is, if not within everyone's sort of capability, certainly not mine, it's certainly within everyone's aspiration, that we can all paint 50 or 60 figures, we can all lay on a very small table of tremendous terrain, and that will stop people in their tracks as they're walking past the show. And that's one of the things that I've seen quite a lot of times at Antwerp.
Yeah.
Actually, one of the things that I really like about the Antwerp show is the fact that we go to lots of shows in the UK. Is the fact that the emphasis at Antwerp is still with historical wargaming in the majority. There is still going to be some science fiction, still some fantasy. Absolutely fine, all welcome. However, that the stuff that's on the table is largely historical, and that is what floats my boat. I'm nothing against other genres of games, but I mean, I always say, Crisis is the best UK wargame show because we're not a million miles away, and I think if people in the UK haven't been, and hundreds and hundreds do come every year. I mean, there were guys there today from Halifax who I've seen at UK wargame shows who've never been before and said to me, just the best show, absolutely fantastic show. And it's that historical content that really, really makes it worthwhile for me. I really want to stop and look at historical wargames. I walk by and vaguely admire things that are science fiction, but historical wargaming just encapsulates what I want out of the hobby.
There was certainly some tremendous historical war games there. So there was a brilliant games of the Battle of Courtrai from 1302, which was the day of the Golden Spurs. There was a great Second Northern War game which has been fought on a very narrow table but with a significant defensive line which between the Poles and the Swedes. There were some tremendous sort of colonial games there, and there was some great World War II games there. There was a really impressive sort of 30-core game of the Arnhem campaign.
Yeah,
and I'd agree.
that looked a nice big table those guys have got lined up there for sure. Lots of hardware on it.
Yeah, and interesting that actually it's one of the places that we want to combine with a trip to Antwerp and actually take that from Joe's Bridge up and take that 30-core route. So seeing that there really was inspirational. I love the way that they'd used AstroTurf for the sort of holders and had the raised road going through. And I also love the fact that on the flank you've got the pack gun, which is a scene from the film where you see the Germans winding up the little thing to get the packs on target as 30 core go up, and then bang, it's the ambush.
Well,
that for me, that really sums up that when that film really hots up.
When I saw it, they had the purple smoke there as well, which is a whether it's a tribute to the film or the history, I'm not quite sure. But the actually, what you said there about the sort of the greengrocer's AstroTurf is an interesting one, because the other thing I noticed walking around today was people selling gaming mats in a way that maybe I don't get to walk around enough shows, but the mat. And the concept of the gaming mat is now something that's much more mainstream, much more affordable, really good quality stuff. People selling mats, but not only that, they can also do that, like the robes that go on them in the mat style, so you lay them out. And I just noticed that there seemed to be a lot more of those than I'd previously kind of clocked on my way around different shows. I think it's whether it's something about people not spending the hours to do the terrain like they used to or not, I don't know. Just throw out a mat and get a good game going or not. I don't want to read too much into it.
That people want the game to look good. It's not good enough just to have a good game. It's got to look good as well. So yeah, you're quite right. I did notice there was a lot of these sort of mats, but also a lot of buildings and so on. That these the laser cut buildings. I mean, they've really taken a big place in the games now. So.
I think that brings us on to another really interesting point that we might just want to touch on is the portability of gaming. So one of the big things about a mat for gaming is that you don't need modular terrain. Modular terrain looks brilliant, and a number of us have sort of built it over the years, and we may have it at home, but it is an absolute pain in the bottom to sort of like try and transport anywhere, where with a gaming mat you get the same sort of visual impact a lot easier. I mean, thinking about putting on the games that we have done over the years, what are the things that we really sort of look for? I mean, I tend to think that, we want to take good figures to a game, but, we also want to have something which just doesn't require sort of like a forklift truck or a massive van to be able to transport.
Yeah, I think without doubt, many wargamers have stimulated visually. So they like to have something to look at, and that's the first thing that draws them in, isn't it? So whether that's like an array of figures laid out that you can see the checkerboard style of a battle, or whether it's the rooftops of a Victorian, one of these tables where somebody's put 400 MDF buildings together to make like the rooftop of London town. It's a visual thing that draws you in. There was a game today at Crisis, right when you came into the entrance, which was a fantasy action, which had a city wall. And I don't know how long this game was.
It's a bigger wall than the one that's
bring on the wall.
Towers.
It is. It's a very big wall, bigger than a wall that goes around Sydney's garden.
Yeah.
And here you were with with this massive sort of Lord of the Rings type armies going around it. But visually, it was absolutely stunning.
Yeah, and I think that is. It's kind of like the thing that you always want to dream as a wargamer to aspire to. You want to have something which is really visually impressive, but at the same time, especially the UK wargamers coming over from the UK to Belgium, you actually got to have something which packs into your car.
Yeah, that's really true. I mean, we were running 2 games today, and we had to fit both of them in the car, along with 3 relatively fat blokes. It takes a lot of space. I mean, we were crammed in, weren't we?
Yeah.
We were really crammed in on the way here. Yeah. So yeah, you've got to make that work. And certainly, one of the things that I used for the game I was running was the green terrain cloths that Games Workshop used to sell. Now they don't sell them anymore, but they're 6 foot by 4 foot. They roll out. You can screw them in a ball. They take the shape back. You can put them in a washing machine. I paid about 50 quid each for them on eBay. But I'll tell you something, that 100 quid has paid itself back, because I can roll them up, put them in the back of the car, which compared to a rigid terrain board is so much easier.
And there's a flexibility issue there, isn't there? I mean, remember that we once, dare I say, it came to Crisis with some beautifully made terrain boards they were lovingly crafted over a period of time, and unfortunately, it has to be said that they were slightly inflexible because they were of a trenched design, and they didn't win any awards. And I think that's always a thing that Richard reminds me of.
Was this the one time, Sidney, where you had handmade the terrain?
It was.
And we didn't win the best participation
correct.
game of the show.
And I'm still apologising 10 years on. But the thing about those terrain boards is that, I think everyone at the club enjoyed playing on them.
Yeah.
But they really weren't very flexible.
Oh,
we found that they were...
terrain that did win the following year. What was the terrain that did win the following year?
Oh, the terrain that won the following year, funnily enough, was an old white dust sheet that I'd spilt paint all over, which we used for a winter war battle. That cost me the sum of nothing, whereas you spent lots and lots of money and many, many hours building your terrain.
So it's not all visual, is it? There's something else going on.
It was
there.
visual.
It's about engagement.
It was visual. My use of that dust sheet was inspirational.
And I think, being serious, just picking up on that point, we did learn a lot from the experience of trying to make a war game just look visually attractive. And I think over the years we've really developed as players who put on games in really trying to engage people. And I think that's one of the things that all of us
funnily enough, today, I used these Games Workshop cloths, and the table was largely an area of open space, open fields. So one field I left plain with the cloth coming through. Another field I used a doormat which looked like a ploughed field, and then another field I used teddy bear fur. Now, they're just open fields, but by using those three different textures, the three different looks, it made the table look interesting and varied.
And all of your players, when they were engaged in that game, were very much participating. There was a real sort of connection, and I think over the years a lot of different war games clubs, a lot of different war games players have really sort of focused on that as being one of the things which really gets people interested. It's not just, it is the visual space, it is the terrain, but also we have, just as war gamers over the years, we've just got better at staging war games. I'd like to think, go
that's
around.
Not us, that's the hobby collectively, isn't
indeed,
it? Yeah.
that's what I mean.
You
used to perhaps go around in the 80s or the 90s to a table which looked immaculate.
2-foot polystyrene terrain boards.
Yeah, and maybe nobody really sort of, they were just playing a game and you used to have to introduce yourselves.
Yeah.
Whereas now we've got a real feel that, wherever you go, certainly at Crisis, very much meet and greet, very personal. The hobby and the friendships within the hobby, bolstered by the internet, that's been a real theme, I think, of the hobby over the last 5 years.
Yeah, possibly on a less positive note. I mean, one of the things I did notice is the age range of the people that were coming along. There were very few youngsters at the show today. So yeah, we've all got these great looking games. Is that just that we're all more experienced, we've been in it for longer,
got more cash in the bank?
Got more cash in the bank.
Because we're...
But a real concern is that there's very little youth around at the show today.
Do you know what? I find that really interesting because all the people who played in the games I ran were younger than me, and a lot of them were 10.
That's not difficult, but
I love the hilarity of your company, but a lot of them were 10, 20, even 30 years younger than me. So I'm not majorly convinced by that. I think when we look at the hobby, a lot of people go, "Where are the 20-year-olds?" Well, frankly, the 20-year-olds are at university. Whereas when I was 20, not every kid went to university. I certainly didn't have the opportunity. So you had a lot of 20-year-olds in War Games Club. So they go to now they go to university. They have to get a job, which involves them in working all the hours that God sends. Then they tend to, maybe get married or, meet a partner. And then when they're in their 30s, they go, oh, right, okay, I bought my first property. I've actually got a little bit of cash in the bank and then I want to get back into it. And if those guys have come in through the Games Workshop hobby, they don't want to go back to the local Games Workshop shop and play with 12-year-olds. They might get arrested. So I do think that we shouldn't look for 20-year-olds in the hobby. We should be looking at how many 35-year-olds are in the hobby. And I certainly played with a lot of 35-year-olds today.
I'm sure you probably have.
Yeah, but so I think that's positive.
There was a comment from one gentleman who arrived at the stand today, in as much that he said that he was introduced to the hobby through the Games Workshop.
Model type thing.
Indeed, model. And he went through life with the Games Workshop model, but as he matured and wanted to develop into or get himself into historical wargaming, he personally thought that there weren't that many historical wargames around. And I think it's a case that as you sort of look into the hobby, you've got one perception of the hobby, and then you want to change tack, for want of a better word, and move on. It is quite difficult because you've only got that experience and basis to work to, or sorry, working from. And as you expand your horizons, it is quite difficult if you've only got that experience in that in that fancy past.
I think that is an excellent point. I mean, let's go back to the 1980s when I was young and in the hobby. Companies like Games Workshop would publish White Dwarf, the magazine, and they'd be looking at Games Workshop products, but they'd also be talking about other products. So it gave you a window on that world. Whereas if you come at it purely from a sort of Games Workshop background now, you're possibly entirely unaware that all this other side to the hobby exists.
I think it is that, but it's also the fact that if you're into golf, you can buy a golf magazine in WH Smith's or wherever it is that you buy your magazines, but you know the rules of golf. You can buy a football magazine, you know the rules of football. The thing with wargaming is that there were 3 fantastic Wargames magazines out there available on the high street, so to speak. But when you start that journey as a wargamer, it is still quite difficult. You've got a number of very good introductory wargames rule sets which are well supported by the manufacturers, and you can pick any of those, and the reason that they're very popular is because they do take people from starting with very little understanding, maybe, or perhaps considerable understanding, but you've got everything which is ready-made in armies and terrain. But at the same time, it is still quite a difficult hobby to get your hand around for somebody who maybe doesn't want to just do Second World War or Napoleonics. Actually getting everything together is quite difficult.
One very positive thing I did notice today was there was an awful lot of new board games coming along. Now, certainly from my perspective, that was my feeder into wargaming, and it could just be that will bring along the next cadre of youngsters coming into it. It's very easy to pick up a board game, getting into historical gaming, and then progress on to figures, rather than just go straight into the figure gaming.
Yeah, I mean, I've changing the angle a little bit on that. I mean, I noticed actually in terms of the traders and the way that the trade thing is set up, and you've got lots of big businesses setting up big areas of the trading space where they've got walk-in areas where you can buy God knows what else. But I was really struck by the amount of independence. You're saying about the range of things that are out there, Sid. Where do people start? There's so many small businesses that have got some absolutely cracking material out there. Really love figure manufacturing. Yeah, really good quality. And I think I keep my ear close to the ground, like my beer belly. But the thing is, when you go out there, you look around the show. There's so much stuff there that I've never heard of.
And I think it's really, really important that we try and make sure that young people in the hobby are able to connect with those small businesses. So I think that is the job of the magazines in the hobby, to take responsibility for covering the whole hobby. Now, I'll give you an example. If you buy, I don't know, Rugby Weekly magazine or Football Monthly magazine, they don't just talk about Manchester United, Liverpool and Chelsea or whoever the latest top teams are. They talk about the second division, the third division, the fourth division, and whatever they call them these days. I'm not a soccer man, but they talk about what's going on in their sport right the way across the board. So if you've got an athletics magazine, you might be reading about Mo Farah at 1 minute and Jessica Innes and people like that, but you might also be reading about what's happening at St Albans Athletics Club, because that's the feeder that's coming through, and those magazines are taking a view of the hobby as a whole. One of the issues in our hobby is it's too easy for magazines just to focus on the big companies who are out there. And I think they have a real responsibility to inform the reading public about all the options that are out there, because as you say, there's some fantastic companies out there doing a really, really great job with some exciting products. And one of the things I really try and do on Lard Island News is when I find new companies who've got a product that excites me and interests me, and I think will be relevant to people who are using our rules, I want to get on there and do a review of that, maybe build that building, maybe make that kit and do that review. And it would be good to think that the wargames magazines out there could really focus on keeping everybody informed about the whole hobby, rather than just an elite 10% who might have a big sales presence in terms of turnover, but aren't necessarily representative of the hobby of the whole.
Yeah, but and also if the shows become overly dominated by those groups, actually there's no point in going to the show, because I can buy all that stuff online,
See
you
the
know.
same thing,
Yeah, but I want to go and see is what I want to go and see is the stuff that I don't normally see. I want to wander around and see what takes my fancy, and look at that pirate captain and think, well, that looks nice, I'll have some of those. And look at those boats you bought today, Sid. You know, they're a good example of that kind of thing.
Yeah, so I got hold of some 28mm boats, which were just made by a gentleman in Germany who'd cast them himself, and they were just available at the show, and they're absolutely fantastic.
They look great.
They look absolutely superb, yeah.
And I think part of the fun in wargaming has always been collecting, as well as playing and painting and enjoying a game with your friends. And I think one of the things that wargames shows which are really successful, in my idea, is that how many of the smaller manufacturers you get there, people who are basically doing what we'd call in the UK to be a cottage industry, you know, maybe casting figures in a shed, maybe doing resin casting, 3D printing. That's a big part of the hobby for me, and it's always a pleasure to discover new stuff. So that's a big sort of shout out, I guess, to wargame shows to always encourage not just the anchor sort of distributors and the anchor manufacturers, but also the small guys and small ladies. You know, and as you say, it's nurturing the hobby.
Guy, effectively.
Yeah.
And allow the small guy to be able to exhibit his latest idea and to nurture it and to make it available so that everybody can see it, and to make these guys a success, because without that success from the small guy, the hobby is not going to be developed as we'd like it to, and eventually the whole thing will just die. So you really do need to nurture these smaller manufacturers.
And I think that's one of those things that in Antwerp, that's always been a feature that we've enjoyed. We've enjoyed coming here, and we've enjoyed seeing European traders, as well as the big UK traders or the medium-sized, smaller UK traders also making the journey over.
But there's something there as well also about the enjoyment of coming to the show. So I'm putting myself in the place of a punter, if you like, coming in through the gate, and I'm going to come and I've got some ideas of what I want. But the reason I've come to the show is I want to see some games, I want to see what other people do with stuff, and I want to see some things that I don't normally see, and I want to make some impulse buys. And my feeling of that is that actually my impulse buys are going to come from those smaller manufacturers, from the things that I see and think, oh bloody hell, that looks good. And I'm not going to get an impulse buy by going to some of the big stands, because actually there's nothing there that I haven't already seen.
I think that's we've seen this on the internet, we've seen it in the magazines. That's a really, really great point, isn't it? It's the delight of tracking down something produced by a smaller manufacturer, or maybe just an unfamiliar manufacturer that we haven't seen before. That's always been the real pleasure of a wargame show, and the internet has changed that sort of way in which we buy our products. You know, we all know what's available from fantastic manufacturers like Perry Miniatures, Warlord Games, or any one of a dozen that you can mention. We all know that they've got great products, but we all are very familiar with those products. The real attraction of wargame shows going forward, I think, for a number of us in the future, is the ability not only to connect with our friends and play games we enjoy, but also find things that we just weren't even aware of.
Yeah, very good point.
And actually, I think that's one of the joys, to kind of round off, I think that's one of the joys of coming to Antwerp, because all of a sudden we're faced with traders that we do know in the UK, but also a load of traders that we do not know. And that is what makes Antwerp unique, different games, different traders, different experience.
Right, I think it's your round, Sid.
And on that point,
On that bombshell.
before I can get my hand in my wallet, I'd just like to say thank you to the Tin Soldiers of Antwerp.
Absolutely, well done, guys.
Staged a fantastic show year after year. Thanks so much for everyone who came and said hello to us. And I will just sign off by saying thank you to Biffo, to Noddy, to Nick, and to Richard. And on that, let Roger Barraclough and his orchestra play us out for the rest of this evening. Good night, everyone.
Tonight's show was brought to you from the European city of Antwerp. And your host was Sidney